I am live. Amazing. So this is all about the Truth Speak website that and the idea that I had a couple of years ago. Just when I realized I needed to kind of diversify from the contracting and stuff. I'm more than just a guy that can figure out how to put stuff together and how to wrangle and herd all the cats to get them together. Um, so I really started putting effort into this, targeting and uh, trying to influence parents because here's the deal. So I've been a pretty prolific contractor for over 20 years now. And I've been in construction my whole adult life, even like right out of high school and supplementing my income, even when I was racing, was always piecework, right? Even if I worked at a shop, whether it be motorcycles or bicycles, or I even I worked at a place that did automotive stuff, but that was hourly. But that was right out of high school. Um, And I worked in motorcycle shops and stuff my whole life, so a lot of mechanics involved. I have allergies, really bad allergies, so I'm sorry about, itching my nose, but it's crazy. And I took a D yesterday, one of those, D level ones, which, man, that stuff mess with your head, so all night long, I woke up early and then couldn't get back to sleep just because you know, the chemicals in my brain. I've always written and read. I'm a prolific reader, and a little bit of backstory so that you can kind of get some perspective here is when I was a little kid, my parents, so I'm Gen Xer, my parents, my dad was an engineer, but he was a traveling guy, so he was all over the world and stuff. He was on the beginning of the channel, a mining engineer, and he traveled the world doing subway systems in major cities and stuff, uh, expanding, building, actually installing them and uh, expanding and stuff like that. So when I was with him, and they were divorced when I was very young. I don't even remember them being married. And they got along okay, so that wasn't the real deal. My mom was kind of, you know, she drank way too much. You could call her an alcoholic. She drank that much. And she was a party girl for real, and so she really wasn't around or guiding, and I'm the last of 6, so there wasn't a lot of supervision and stuff, and I was okay with that. I wasn't like one of these kids and stuff. They all said that my acting out, and it wasn't acting out, was because I was seeking attention, but that's not what it was. What it was from a very early age, I learned one of my main caretakers, in fact, I knew this as my caretaker more than even my mother. I didn't really think of my mom much other than she was in the house all the time, was one of my sisters, and she was killed in an automobile accident out of the blue when I was 5 years old in 1972. And there's a whole other backstory I could do, but it has nothing to do with this. It's just, an interesting history thing, um, that revolves around that, some not so great stuff. But anyways, I learned then, and I didn't realize I'd learned this, but I learned then that, what you're counting on could be gone with no warning. Like what because at that time, at 5 years old, your main character is caretaker is your whole world. And the lesson that I learned at that time, like I said, I wasn't aware that I'd learned this lesson, but the behavior and the things that I did after that kind of are the fruit of that is that, and it's true. It's absolutely 100% true. And I know, I've known my whole life. It's like one of my earliest memories, that, uh, no matter what it is in your life, unless you're the one that's being taken out of the picture and having your life taken from you, anything and everything in your life could be gone in an instant, and there's no way you can stop it. Okay, so fate is not something that you can do anything about that. So, and an example of how that affected me is within a year there. I mean, before the end of that school year, and that was kindergarten, I'd hopped on a bus and ended up outside of town because I saw another kid get in on the bus. It was a fairly small town, not that small, a mid-sized town back in the early '70s, and ended up outside of town, and that's probably also where I started to develop my wonderful lying skills, which I don't have anymore. In fact, honesty is such a big thing for me now. But I talked my way into this kid's house and his neighborhood and everything else, and assured everybody I knew and they listened to me, which is silly. Um, but it took a long time, and of course, I ended up in a car, um, taken back to my house, which had a lot of police cars and stuff like that there because it was nighttime by then. So I'd been missing. I was one of these Amber Alert kids, but there was no Amber Alert back then. It was just missing kids, reported missing kids. But I was always that kid that you you couldn't count on him to be there. You couldn't uh, rely on me to do anything. I was off the charts as far as being able to read, write, math, everything else, and I owe that to my grandmother on my father's side because in the summers we were with him, and she was a retired school teacher, and so every day, every weekday, we had school in the morning. And before we did any chores, before we got to go ride our motorcycles or our bicycles or go outside just to, you know, cause problems with each other. These allergies, man, I'm telling you. But which meant that, and then, but my dad was also very passive. So, um, and he couldn't count on me either. So, and I have a brother that was within 3 years. A lot of sibling rivalry. That's at the very edge of the sibling rivalry thing, but it was there. And we fought to the death without dying many times. He was much larger than me, so I thank him for not killing me because I probably had it coming a couple times. But so I came into adulthood with a lot of independence already, right? And didn't need a lot of money because it was just me and stuff like that. I'd stopped racing and riding motorcycles because I didn't wanna be tied to anything that was gonna require me to earn enough money to support racing a motorized vehicle. There's a saying, that the way to make a small fortune in racing motorsports is to start with a very large fortune. And that's how you make a small fortune. Because if you don't start with a very large fortune, you soon will not be doing motorsports anymore and have a lot of debt and no savings. So I switched over to, and also a lot of people were saying I was going to kill myself. I mean, not intentionally, you know what I'm saying? Is like the way I rode and drove and everything else that I was gonna be the one that, would end up 6 feet under. And probably at that time with that mentality that I had, they were probably correct because I had some pretty good get-offs. Um, but I took it to heart. Honestly, I did, because I kind of recognized that. I mean, one time, anyways, let's just say it was deserved, right? And with the blessing of having all of my appendages still and not being crippled, although the pain from all that is real at this age. Um, uh, I switched over to bicycle racing, which is a you join teams, and with the exception of road racing, which I did a lot of that. In fact, I had Olympic invitation letters and stuff from to go to Salt Lake and stuff, and I was pretty good at it. Uh, that was, kind of the route that I went. I was always, had to be as intense as possible, and that was the safest way that I could. Still crashed, still have a lot of scars from that. Still dangerous, to a good degree, but not quite as much as if you're doing 5 to 10 times that speed. You know what I'm saying? Like, um, the sudden stops are much worse if they come to a sudden stop, and the velocity you're traveling at, and to come to that sudden stop, the lower the velocity, the safer you are. Um, which led to my first marriage and my first daughter, and then me realizing that there had to be some responsibility taken. And so then I started looking for avenues to make a living, and I had some ideas that went through school and stuff, and I became disillusioned with that pretty quickly, like within 2 or 3 years, just because the politics of corporate life don't fit me. So I tried to join the army also. This is right out of high school because I didn't have any direction. There wasn't really, there's no trust money or anything else like that. It was sink or swim, right? And so I tried to join the army. And in fact, I did. And I was given not a hard pass, but a recommended pass. I mean, there's not very many people that can say they raised their hand and went through induction and everything, and then were pulled aside and said, "Do you want to? Now's the time. Do you want to leave? Because this really isn't for you." Because they give you all these other tests and stuff, and I scored really high on the ASVAB and stuff. But they said I was never gonna get there because I had a problem with authority. True, very true. So that becomes an issue not only in the military, which I came this close, but it comes into, corporate life too, right? So you'd have to, in order to be successful in corporate world, you'd have to swallow a lot of pride, probably follow some paths you might not agree with, and act like you agree with it. And it's just not me. Never was, never will be, not to this day. What you're going to hear from me is me. Um, so, got into piecework, building a whole bunch of stuff, getting paid just on merit, and I'm fine with that. And that's how I ended up. Like, I realized, hey, you can make money if you can do quality work and do it quick and put in the time. You can make some decent money. And so that's what I ended up doing. And then going from doing piecework assembly and building stuff and fixing things on a piece basis through service companies. I and having my daughter, and then that marriage not working, and then having another wife, and then ending up with another daughter and then another, um, in between the 2 daughters from my second wife, I also started to think, well, I need to build some security, right? So buy a house or, like something solid that, you can build some equity, something where you're putting your money in and it's staying there, right? Instead of a bank account, because a bank account, a savings account, the harder it is to pull it out, the easier it is to save, right? So if you put it into things, tangible assets, even though they may depreciate, real estate generally doesn't unless you really make a mistake. Um, but tangible assets and buy them, right? So I've never been a big fan of payments, but I'm in that situation right now. And the reason is because that whole mindset of buying and having tangible assets and trying to be responsible and um, and working piecework. So what happens when a person develops and starts moving forward, but they have a problem with authority is if you're moving forward, there's no real advancement in like building things or anything else like that unless you start to build bigger things, bigger, more complex, more uh, important things, more expensive things, right? So the margins are much better there. And then, so just doing that like carpentry and home improvement and renovations and working with rental companies to go in and redo the interiors of houses and or um, simple repairs. I started looking at the big picture and to, like build the whole house, um, put a whole addition on, do whatever in a bigger sense. And that always meant the bigger jobs always meant hiring somebody. And then licensure, more responsibility, more responsibility, more responsibility, and more work, and then also herding cats. That's what I mentioned at the very beginning. There's a lot of herding cats when you have employees, especially in construction, because you have to have the quality, not just to try and get past inspections and codes and things like that, but also because further down the line, if you've been doing it a long time and you're not moving from location to location and region to region, then you have a personal reputation. And the reputation needs to be that of quality. I don't care about reliability at this point because I have over 2,000, probably 4,000, honestly, customers in my database. And I have come to the point in my life and my career and in any construction industry, because I've talked to all the trades, that the skill level just isn't there. Like, just 5 years ago, I was, almost never in the field except for to go and visit a site or to talk to a customer or to, supervise something. Now, the only way anything gets done right, honestly, even when I subcontracted or use somebody that I would normally trust and do trust, I without exception, probably in the last year, I have personally either had to go out to troubleshoot, repair, or clean it up to get it to my standards and or do it myself. And uh, and this comes from the new society thinking of everybody deserves the same thing, and the people that are driving around in a new car and this, that, and the other, and it's amazing how many new cars and um, people with Gucci bags and all these high end, legitimately expensive accessories are in the free food line and getting SNAP or all this other stuff. Um, I'm I don't like the whole class thing and this, that, and the other, with the exception of if you aren't willing to work for it, you shouldn't be getting it. And that society has done a great disservice in the last 5 years by giving away so much. And that's not just governmental, that's also the industries out there, right? So you have all these distributors and marketplaces that have made living day to day just lazy, absolutely 100% lazy. And you can disagree all you want, but it's true. Right. So not liking something somebody says doesn't make it wrong. And that's another problem with society. You have so many people out there that disagree with people that are telling the absolute truth, but they just stick their fingers in their ears and their head in the sand. And they just do not want to face the truth. And the truth is that people do not they're not willing to admit that they don't know something. They're not also not everybody, but we're talking about probably less than 10% of people are willing to absolutely 100% admit their mistakes, absolutely 100% try to rectify their mistakes or to increase their knowledge to the point where they could be competent in what they say they're an expert in. Um, and or be reliable to any degree or have any there's because the self-respect is not based on performance anymore. Um, Self-respect is I don't even know if it exists anymore. It's such a group thinking now. What is it? This guy in New York that just got to be the mayor or something. He wants to get rid of what was it? Rugged individualism for the sake of collective calm, uh, something or other. But it's like it's to get rid of individual thought. But leaders are necessary. They're absolutely necessary. And I'll bet you he's not willing to drop his salary and share with everybody how he's making extra money on the side and disclose all of his connections and then talk to his connections to make sure everybody else he some people are very selfish and self-centered. They try to increase their value by putting everybody else down. And that's the way I see people like that. They're not really trying to help anybody. What they're trying to do is make everybody less so they can be more. And try to be an authority so everybody listens to them. But it's this they're the ones, even though they're saying it's everybody else. That's a classic con game, by the way. Um, but anyways, so in this construction industry over the last 5 years, this is a whole society thing. And it's not just the US, even though you have a whole bunch of people saying, oh, the US is so bad and this, that, and the other. Well, regardless of whether you like the immigration stuff that's been going on or don't like it, or you want to deport people or you don't want to deport people, all these people came over and we did not see an increase in the ability or the strength of the workforce. As soon as they got their hand out, they became just like everybody else in this society. Why work? Why put forth a lot of effort? It's like, and so the only way I could see this, and I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I tried to battle it. I wrote a book, and I've got to redo the cover and the title and stuff like that because I did it under a pen name because I wasn't trying to get any self glory. I just was trying to be like, look, in all my trying to deal with all these people and all my studying and that's how you should do it is study it and not popular opinion, but really get in there and work on things. Is I was just beating my head against the wall because today's society has become so egocentric and uh, ignorant. Even if they know it's wrong, they're going to do it. Right. So, for instance, here's one instance. There are in basically every jurisdiction for every and every municipality in every state, there are laws on the books to keep people from being on their social media and being distracted when they're driving. They call it distracted driving. Have you ever seen or even heard of somebody being pulled over for that? And on top of that, have you ever seen a police officer or a sheriff or, a trooper or whatever you want to call them, whatever ilk they are? Have you ever seen one of them in their vehicle looking at their phone? It's like it's so common to see this. Everybody has buried their head in these screens for this instant gratification, and also to do and I'm doing this also, but I really honestly am not doing this for me. Uh, I mean, I'm gonna make it my life's work, along with other things, because I don't even know how this makes money. Um, but I have to make a living. So I have a lot of sticks in the fire, including contracting still. But dealing with individuals has just been so hard. And I'm not talking about generations, because I've got people my age and older that have fallen for this whole um, shtick that's going on with all this entitlement in the world today. So the only way I can really think about it and think that the only real hope would be is to really go towards the kids. And because all this stuff is proven, this is not opinion. And again, we go back to, you might not like what I'm saying. You might not like the message. You might not like the idea of grit, hard work, suffering, stress, uh, um, being humble and being thankful above your own pride and being prideful and everything else like that. And the idea that kids and adults shouldn't be dusted off every time they fall down. Um, it's because it is absolutely, it's proven. There's been every, not every, but I will say every major uh, educational institution that has sociology programs and has and a research department for sociology has done studies on this. And kids that have adverse backgrounds, I'm not talking about just and some of these kids are abused, and I'm not saying anybody should abuse a kid, but what I'm saying is the adversity, the struggle, if they get through that, Okay, so the abused and neglected kids, if they get through that without addiction and without like seriously being scarred and following the same paths and ending up sociopaths, then they end up stronger than almost everybody else. That's not the route I'm talking about doing. I'm not telling you to neglect or abuse your kids. I'm telling you that if you're a parent, if you're around your kids, introduce challenging things to them all the time, not sometimes, all the time. Keep the screens away from them. There's no reason for it. For what? I went to church this weekend and I literally heard one of the pastors, because we just got through with the Christmas season, talking about how traveling was such a dream nowadays because he can just put a screen in front of his kids and then they're quiet and well behaved the whole trip. What a lazy, terrible thing to do. Anyways, and it is. Un If you and I get it, it's part of society. You need to know how to use these things, but do you need to know how to use them to waste time? I I see these things as miracles, and I can't see how other people don't use them the way they could be used. You have on these devices access to all of the recorded and written and digitized history, science, facts, statistics that any organization, country, state has digitized. And there's so much knowledge available here. It's crazy. I literally have people that'll come in here and they've got a phone in their hand or on a job site. If I have somebody working for me, they've got one of these phones in their hands. In fact, I just saw them wasting time and the only reason they got off the phone is because they figured I was watching them or caught them. And then they ask, how can I do this? How do you figure this out? Or, oh, I didn't know this. Or you see them doing something that they think they know how to do it, but they obviously don't. And that device has endless tutorials from the manufacturer, has endless troubleshooting guides from the manufacturers, um, from very skilled tradespeople, tons and tons and tons, thousands of videos and tutorials. And you can, if you are the least bit discerning, you can pick the garbage out and you can learn, but people just don't. They just use it like it's just entertainment. So my dad, on the summers that we were with him, we it, sometimes there was no TV because to him it was an idiot box. And that's probably where I learned all my love for reading and stuff like that was by being around him because that was really the only source of entertainment outside of going outside, playing ball, riding the bike, go riding motorcycles, climb a tree, play tag, um, go outside and do something. And it's hard now because I have a 10-year-old son now, and his mom was never with her except for to make him, and that's I've got plenty of these stories that are unbelievable, but we won't get into that right now. But I I, I bought a house in a one entrance neighborhood, and it's a circle with a cut through street. And I bought the house that is furthest from the entrance. all the way around in the back. In fact, it's like if you were to drive through houses and through yards directly from the entrance, you'd end up at my house. But you can't get there unless you go around the neighborhood. It is the furthest point from the entrance on purpose because I wanted him to be able to go out and play with all the neighborhood kids without a worry in the world other than him checking in uh, um, on regular intervals. And there's 120 some houses in the neighborhood. I would say a good 30% of those houses or more have kids, and there's at least a dozen or more, at least a dozen more, I'm pretty sure, but I wouldn't know, kids his age in the neighborhood, but you never see them. There's a handful. There's just a very few small number of kids in the neighborhood that get that come out and play at all, and then the people in the neighborhood complain about it. Like, they're too noisy. They're on the street. There's, it's 20 miles an hour in this neighborhood, and it's like it's narrow, it's just a circle and a cut through. There's no danger to anybody unless somebody's driving stupid or distracted. There's no danger to anybody. It's you have to be a real bonehead to have any kind of a accident with a vehicle in that neighborhood. So, um, but the and like I said, I know there are other kids in there, but they never come out, which means they're inside. And they're almost assuredly buried in these screens. And I don't think they're becoming super geniuses because I've seen it. It's not happening. It's just not happening. So that's what my purpose is now. So my purpose in the raising winning kids side of things, there's a lot of other sides. Like if you do the link to the website, where I have the Raising Winning Kids page. There's free downloads, and I even have the workbook that I just finished. I mislabeled it as a journal, but it's not a journal; it's a workbook. Um, and there's lots of good stuff there. And I try to do a weekly blog over there, and it's good stuff. It's not, and it doesn't cost you anything. Someday it will, but until I figure the rest of this out, and I've only really been active doing that for 2 months, doing this for 2 months. I wasn't even able to do this live thing earlier because I hadn't been registered and there weren't enough followers and or subscribers or however it works. And this is a different page than so it's a fairly new page. It's not that new, but I had not done less than a dozen um, posts prior to doing the Raising Winning Kids thing. And that website will have, each page will be, another spoke to the truth speak. And the truth speak is just that. It's all going to be the truth. You don't have to like it. I know some of you are going to hate it. But it is 100% the truth. It's all going to be the truth. Even if we were to go in and do this affiliate thing that everybody else does, the people basically just go and do that uh, to make the most money they can. And they don't give a damn about what they're selling. It's just like when you turn on the TV. If you turn on the TV and watch anything that you haven't paid an outlandish subscription for, on the commercials, it's all um, tort lawyers, like sue somebody, and or um, uh, pharmaceuticals. Those pharmaceutical commercials, I encourage you, I implore you, I beg of you, because the doctors nowadays are not much better, right? They're not. They're part of the problem with society, honestly, and they're just doing whatever's popular and whatever's gonna make them the most money with the least amount of liability. Watch these commercials. Don't pay a damn bit of attention to the commercial. Pay attention to the stuff that's going on the bottom and the fast talk that they're allowed to put in there, because they have to put the disclaimers in there. And see, how many of those things, the possibility is death? How many of those things, the possibility that just kind of like they say, we can maybe fix this one problem for you, which if that was the real solution, your physician would have come off and done that. There was a time when it was illegal to have pharmaceutical companies broadcast on media, on TV or the radio, and there's a good reason for that. And I'll bet you don't know. I'll bet you can figure out. But if you don't know how that changed, well, there's politicians. If you know a politician or you see a politician that got rich after they became a politician, well, they're a crook and they're lying to you. And on the same note, if you see a politician that came in rich and left less rich, you're probably seeing somebody that's trying to do the right thing. I'm just saying. Um, and I'm not, I am, a lot of that is gross to me now too, because it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. They're both pretty ugly right now as far as the mentality and the passion and the chaotic nature of people in their politics right now. It's like you. I don't hate anybody that's a Republican, a Democrat, libertarian. I could give a damn less. And however, by and large, they've all bought into what they've been fed from this screen, that you got to hate the other guy, that the other guy is the devil. And the other guy might be misinformed and he might be acting on some less than moral actions and instructions. But a lot of these people, especially if it's something that you want to belong to, they'll ignore that and they will just blindly agree because it's a group or uh, some affiliation that the rest of the people they're around like. And so it becomes kind of a mob thing, a mob mentality or a group thinking. And here's where independence is really, really, really great, because you don't have to buy into any of that. You really don't. In fact, I have an analogy. I've been using this analogy for a long time because I've been in construction. So in construction, anything that is an actual structure, which includes roads, you have to account for debris and water. Okay, because that's just the nature of the beast. You have to account for debris and water. Um, and so where does the least amount of crap build up? The highest point, right? So the least amount of crap, the least likelihood that you're up to your ankles in sewage is in the middle, the peak of the roof, not either side, up here at the peak. A road is crowned. You have a gutter on one side and a gutter on the other, and they're the low points. So if you call something far left or you call something far right, you're saying the other person's in the gutter. And you can say that about other people, but it may or may not be true, because the right place to be is right over here, right over here. And you could completely, like the vast majority of the time, believe and or subscribe to what is being said over here, but you should damn well independently, not not just log into a site that agrees with you, not just listen to something on TV that you agree with, not just listen to something on the radio that you agree with. Independently and critically, be an analytical person, like really look at the truth and be open and flexible enough to change if you're wrong. This is what's missing. Nobody nowadays will change if they're wrong. Nobody's a broad term, um, but it's prolific and popular enough so where it's true. Um, saying everybody includes me, and yes, sirree, sometimes I'm that person. However, I catch myself, right? When something really is wrong, or something that I've even said or I've believed, I suck it up. I've talked to people in the past, and even after the fact, find out something later on down the line that I was wrong about. I will literally reach out and talk to them. Um, but I never get that in return. Never. Never. I just never get that anymore. I mean, I used to. There used to be like a lot of my bads, or my bad, this whole thing, because that does happen. People say that nowadays quickly, like when something happens, but they don't change it, right? Then they'll go back and do what they were saying my bad for. So no change. So we're going to be doing. I developed and studied, and that's why I decided to go ahead and start this, because I have a 10-year-old son, and he literally, some kids in the neighborhood won't play with him, and they won't play with him because he's better at a lot of things than most of the kids in the neighborhood, but it's because he's out doing stuff all the time. It's not because he's superior. I have some people that say stuff about me, and in fact, I've been claimed to be a guru, or um, a super genius in some areas and stuff like that, and nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I I truly believe this, and I've said this before, is the reason why I know what I know, and it seems to usually, not always, usually be more than what the other guy knows, is because I do know how much I don't know. Think about that. And there's not anybody watching this, or anybody in this skin, or that I know, that knows everything. And in fact, sometimes I think I'm a downright idiot, because I didn't go down the right path. I didn't use the thing, or I didn't do the research on here. But this is the beauty of today. What I'm telling you to keep your kids away from and everything else like that, with supervision and with instruction, you can teach them to use that phone or this screen to get to the truth. And you can hopefully, and my my deepest heartfelt wish is that the parents and the adults that are paying attention to this and downloading, because I know there's downloads. I don't have any cookies on the website, so because I'm not trying to scare anybody off and I'm not trying to use it for marketing. Maybe someday I'll have to put cookies on there so I can figure out how to get to people, because I think the audience should be much bigger. um, but that by a parent wanting better for their future and using the workbook, by going and reading the blogs, and by reaffirming those things with their family and their kids, it'll rub off. It'll have to. And quite frankly, there's not going to be a lot of change in your kids until there's change in the parents. It's the truth. So none of my content, except for when my kid's at his races or something else like that, where it is, a kid looking at another kid, and, them being in some activity or a sport, or, doing something kid wise, and where, it'd be nice for a kid to hear a kid. I mark everything else as not for kids because I don't. It would be a blessing, if a kid's out there and he comes across this and he decides to go on his own and download the workbook and everything else like that, because the kids will do this. So my son loves it. If you look in the background over there, so these are all things that he builds, and I build with him and encourage him to do, and follow instructions, and um, uh, but So if but he wouldn't have done that himself. He wouldn't have done that himself. He wouldn't have gone out and bought that himself. He wouldn't have gone out and done the Da Vinci clock himself. He wouldn't have built any of the models that we've built. When I had him, he got some new racing wheels for his BMX bike this for Christmas, and he wouldn't have gone out and changed those out himself. He wouldn't have, because society nowadays, I think that a lot of kids from my generation would have, when they were kids. But like I said, the problem with society right now is not generational. There's plenty of people that did just as much stuff as I did when they were kids, but nowadays, today, if you were to catch them, they'd be buried in their phone. They wouldn't be doing anything, and they would be hoping their kid would be quiet or stop asking them for something or anything else like that, so they wouldn't get interrupted from their entertainment, because that's what we're using this stuff for now, is entertainment. And if this is entertaining you, that's great, because hopefully some of it'll stick. All right, so that's almost an hour of me going off. I don't know if that's avoidance from me keeping to do stuff. I got some stuff to do. All right. I guess that's it for now. I'll do some more postings today, tomorrow, and then we're going to change the other. Again, it's a 7-pillar program, and that's um, almost every culture has a reverence to 7 pillars, uh, reference and reverence. So they have both. Including Christianity, Judaism. I'm not sure about um, the Islamic belief, but almost every culture does, for sure. And so, and it turned out, and that's how it became the 7-pillar program, is because I found 7 areas that repeatedly gone over, repeatedly working on things to strengthen those in a kid, will ensure their success and self-reliance and productivity and happiness. Self-fulfilled, self-realized happiness as adults, and it turned out to be 7 things. And so, and I'm kinda going through those also. Both the playbook and, the grit playbook, they all kinda hit on that. The Winning Kids playbook also hits on that, 7 pillars to, I think it's success, I can't remember. Um, I write them, post them, and kinda let them go. Um, but if you download it and you have any issues, please let me know. Um, but you should. It's free. One of these days it might not be free. One of these days I might have a box set. It's I don't see me writing less books now that I've done this last playbook, and it's published now. That's like 4 books that I've done. It's the only one with my name on it. I've done a lot of pen name stuff before, mostly as practice. Because at one time like I said, I'm a prolific reader, but I really like fiction, and I really even more so like historical fiction. Um, but historical, like it really needs to be historical. Like I can't think of his name right now. But anyways, I guess that's it for now. I'm gonna go get busy, try and be productive. If you've been listening or listened to a little bit, thumbs up. Um, you can look for Raising Winning Kids, True Speak. We're on all the formats, and I'm gonna make a difference. There's gonna be at least one kid on this whole planet that's gonna benefit from this. There better be, at the very least, mine, because this motivation is definitely making me reinforce things not only in myself, but that gets turned over into how I'm interacting with my son, and that's improving also. So, just my practice of doing this is helping a lot. And the practice, and that's what this all is repetitive. So the workbook is repetitive. It goes through 7 week cycles, 1 week per pillar, 7 times, and then with some reflection and stuff for the last 3 weeks. And it's still workbook back at that point, but it gets you through a whole year of repeating each pillar 7 times, and concentrating on each pillar, on each thing for a week, daily. And it's important. It really is. It really is important. Monday through Sunday. And, I believe it's Monday through Sunday. It might have started Sunday through Saturday. I can't even remember right now. Um, but get that. I'll be doing more blogs and stuff. I've got a ton of work to do, so it's not, going quite as much as a lot of other social media people, but I'm doing my part. Do yours. Have a great day.